Hi there. We've recently at Indulge started to run a monthly meeting where a member of the team takes a turn to give a short presentation on something that's happening either in our industry or that we're working on that the rest of the team may not know about. So it's a bit of a knowledge share um, meeting. And this month it's my turn, and I took the opportunity to talk about the recent Google leak. So I thought I would also share that via this video as well. So, in terms of the Google leak, what I'm referring to is something called Google's Search Warehouse API. Um, so it's an API documentation. It was discovered online. Seems to have been published to the public in March 2024. It was live to the public for a few weeks, I believe, before it was taken down again. Um, but there were a number of people who discovered this document, and it was shared with some experts in the SEO industry who then spoke to contacts who were involved with Google, so kind of past Google employees. And those people confirmed that it looked to be genuine Google documentation. And subsequently, Google has since confirmed that it is indeed their internal documentation. But what it is it's a long technical document. It contains about 14,000 ranking features, and what that means is that it's essentially a list of things that Google's search team can use to make changes to Google's algorithm. So they are things that Google can use as part of its search engine and how Google ranks websites. So it's an incredibly potentially valuable thing for marketeers. So this is an example of what it looks like. As I say, it's a very technical documentation, but it contains all of these attributes. So these are things that Google's search team can use to tweak how the algorithm works. And each attribute comes with a short description most of the time, unless it's self-explanatory. Um, but this is an important document for a couple of key reasons, really. Firstly, it shows probably everything that Google considers to be a part of its search algorithm. So these are all of the things Google can make use of, all of the levers that Google can pull to decide how their search algorithm works, how websites are ranked, how pieces of content are shown in what order. Um, And equally important is that it contradicts a number of things Google have said over the years about how its algorithm works. Um, and so we'll kind of look at a few examples of that. The way to think about the whole document really though is that it's a list of all of the ingredients that go into making Google's search product, but it's not the recipe. So it doesn't tell you that this feature is more important than this one. But what it does do is it gives you the full list of ingredients, and that alone is an incredibly powerful thing for people to take notice of. So I pulled together a few key takeaways. These are things that I've read about the leak. I've read some analysis of it, and these are things that have stood out to me so far from the document. So the first one is that Google uses data from Chrome in its search algorithm. So for as long as I can remember, Google have denied that this is the case, but actually, this document says otherwise. It says that data that comes directly from Chrome can be used by Google's search team. So the way to think of this is that Chrome then essentially becomes Google's window into how people use the web. So because Chrome is the most widely used web browser, they've got access to vast amounts of data about how people find websites, how people navigate websites, how they view content, how they respond to different features, and this says that they can then use those signals to feed into their search algorithm. Another interesting element of it is that it doesn't seem to filter out paid search traffic. So again, for as long as I can remember, it's quite common if you start running a paid search campaign, so you're running ads on Google Ads, um, not only do you see the traffic increasing because there's paid traffic coming in, but you usually see your organic traffic take kind of uh, see a boost as well. Um, and for a long time, we've thought that the reason for that is that if somebody finds you by searching for a generic product or service, they'll then know your brand and then they will return to your website by searching for your brand, or they will come direct to your website. But actually, what this suggests is that actually, if people are clicking on your ads in Chrome, visiting your site, they're staying there, they're engaging with the content, they're maybe browsing other pages. These are all potentially signals that get sent back to Google to say this is a site that is working well, and therefore those signals become a boost in your organic visibility. So this is really interesting stuff. I don't think it changes strategy so much, but it's still an important thing to know that Google is kind of clearly using Chrome as a source of knowledge. Um, Click data is used extensively. Google have kind of always played it down, but actually they appear to be using clickstream data to a kind of large extent. So what this means is that it's not just about your piece of content, but it's the context of your piece of content. So, where have people been clicking prior to visiting your piece of content? Where do they go next, and what do they click on? And equally, if somebody views a piece of content on your website and then a short while later goes back to Google's search engine and searches for the same information again, that's a pretty negative signal about your piece of content because it suggests that they didn't find the answer they were looking for. So this sort of clickstream data appears to be a kind of an important part of Google's search product. There's a strong focus on entities. So what I mean by entities, they're things. They could be a brand, they could be a person, and Google seems to be putting a big emphasis on entities. So the reason this is important is because if people search for a particular entity, that appears to be a strong signal to Google that that entity is important and there is demand for that entity. Therefore, that's a strong search signal. So that kind of flies in the face of the kind of old school SEO advice that you should name your website after the thing people search for. So, for example, best web design. If you can get the domain bestwebdesign.com and call yourself best web design, then you'll benefit from all of people searching for best web design. But actually, that's not a very tangible entity. And actually, having a clear brand name that is clearly understood as your brand name is potentially a much better strategy. And it kind of explains why certain brands, such as Carwow, run campaigns that encourage people to say, search help me Carwow. I've often wondered why would they want someone to go to Google and type help me Carwow instead of just going to carwow.com or whatever their domain is. And this seems to explain that. It seems to be saying that they value having people searching for their brand. And this documentation kind of goes in line with that. It says that the more people searching for your brand, the better you're going to do across the board. Something else interesting is that the text around links is used to influence Google's understanding of the entity that's linked to. So if somebody links to a web page, the copy that sits around that link can influence Google's understanding of the page that's being spoken about. Again, it ties back to this idea of entities. It's Google trying to understand what an entity is about and how respected that entity is. So to show you kind of how that looks in practice, if somebody is linking to a particular thing, so this is the link, this is the page that's being linked to, the stuff in green that sits before and the stuff in green that sits after will go towards building up Google's understanding of the entity that is being linked to. So all of this stuff becomes incredibly important. Something else interesting was that the quality rated scoring system seems to be baked into Google's search algorithm. So for those who don't know, Google has a set of quality rater guidelines. It's a huge document, I think 170 pages long, and it's used by Google's quality rating team. So there's a team of real people who reference this documentation, and they review sample sets of pieces of content, and they will rank that content, or not necessarily rank it, but they will assess it against these guidelines. And what this is suggesting is that pieces of content that are considered to be the benchmark for the type of content that they are get given a sort of gold star rating, if you like, and that rating gets baked into Google's algorithm. So what it's suggesting is that there is an actual metric that is based on these real people's reviews of content that probably then is used to say this is the benchmark, and that will be used to reference against other pieces of content. I suppose the main takeaway from this is that UX is a very important part of the whole process. So having a well-written piece of content is one thing, but you also need it to exist on a within a user interface that is easy to use, that looks professional, that is backed by a strong brand, that is written by a known expert. All of this stuff is considered. So it actually suggests reading the quality rater guidelines and understanding them is well worth doing. And Google, to be fair to them, have said that for a long time. Something else that stood out was that content effort is measured. There's a metric for effort, particularly low effort content. So Google actively looks out for and flags what it considers to be low effort content. So this kind of speaks directly to this move towards AI driven content. So a number of brands might be relying on AI driven content now, where they're trying to save time by churning out pieces of information that are written in large parts by AI. But what this is suggesting is that Google is taking steps to understand where there hasn't been much effort put into producing a piece of content. Therefore, it's not valued as highly. So I think this suggests that effort is rewarded. Google is trying to understand where effort has been put in, where research has been done, where an expert has been used, and where the time has been taken to produce something of actual quality. Something else that sort of ties back to that is that Google understands core subject matter. So this suggests that being an expert in something is a valuable thing, and there are metrics that sort of tie into that. So understanding what your website and your brand is understood to be an expert in is important. Having authors who are experts in their own fields is important. And it suggests that if you publish content and you don't have authors tied to it, that's maybe a disadvantage. And actually, having your content tied back to a recognized expert would be a valuable thing to do. And then finally, this one is pretty actionable, actually. There's no reference to anything about page title length. There doesn't seem to be any limit to how long a page title should be. And likewise, it would appear that meta descriptions, for the most part, don't really matter. And actually, Google rewrites around 80% of them anyway. So what it's suggesting is that when you see the blue link and the text underneath in Google's search results, most of the time Google has tweaked that stuff. It's not stuff that the website owner has written. Most of the time Google will look at the person who's searching for the information, and it will rewrite that information to make the search result as appealing as it can be for the user who's searching. So I suppose the takeaway from this is that despite what a lot of the SEO tracking tools will tell you about your page title is too long, or your meta description is too long or too short, you can kind of ignore that stuff for the most part, because actually what you should really be doing is write a useful descriptive page title if you're going to include a meta description, write something that is genuinely useful and covers all angles, or just leave it blank and leave it up to Google to kind of fill in that space. But fundamentally, you're trying to provide Google with a few ingredients that it can use to build up snippets that are shown in the search results. So to wrap up, I think this raises a lot of questions about the direction of search and the direction of SEO in general. And I increasingly feel like we're moving away from the model that is here on the left-hand side of the screen, where Google will crawl the web, it will discover websites, it will then discover pieces of content, and it will index those and show them in the search results. I think we're moving increasingly towards this model on the right, where Google understands entities, it understands brands, and it understands authors and the people behind pieces of content. And then it will show snippets of information in different forms, and that could be links to websites, it could be links to pieces of content, it could be snippets taken from social posts, but it uses information that's tied back to a brand or an author. And I think increasingly in the world of SEO, we'll be less concerned about how much traffic does Google send to my website, and it will be more about how many people does Google show me and my brand as a reference to. How often in the search results is a quote from one of my authors referenced, or how often is my brand shown to be the expert in XYZ field? I think increasingly that's the direction that SEO is going to go in, particularly with large language models driving a lot of this change. So yeah, that's an overview of what I spoke about. And if you've got any questions or thoughts on that, please feel free to drop a comment in the box below, or get in touch with us. Thanks.